Welcome to the Winged Wheel Podcast, the number one source for news, analysis, and discussion on the Detroit Red Wings, the NHL, and all things hockey. Here are your hosts, Ryan Hanna, Brad Crisco, and Evan Lopsinger.
Do we think that if Brad just tilted his camera a little bit that way, it would reveal the Centennial jersey?
That would be the funniest possible way to reveal that, and stupidest.
I mean, pitch it. Like, who knows?
I won't say no.
I'll send a few texts. You know what the problem is with that, though, is he would have to move his Max Bultman shrine, and it took him a long time. He just finished that one up. Why do you think
high school cross country jersey and an old recorder from the 2019 draft?
No, it's not that I'd be upset with Max seeing that. It's just that it'd be awkward with how much bigger the Prashant shrine is.
As it should be.
We can't even tell the dear listeners what's to the left of Evan's camera. That's why he always pretends it's completely stationary.
Would left be this way for you guys?
You know what, Evan? That's completely up to you. This is your world. We're just living in it.
There's
I can't see either side of it.
There's a lot of boxes that I should have gotten rid of 5 to 15 years ago that I just can't part with.
I do always hear the old adage of the best time to unpack a home that you moved into 5 years ago is 6 years later when you've had your first child.
Yes. I'll let you know
That's
how that goes.
Yeah.
Unironically, Evan's going to be forced to soon because in a couple of years, he's going to realize how much kids crap there is and he won't have space for that stuff anymore.
I know. That's what I'm really worried about. We were trying to do the getting rid of all the old stuff or getting rid of old clothes beforehand. And unfortunately, we had less time than we thought. But yeah, the amount of runs we've done to the donation centers has been insane.
All right, folks, as you can tell, this is the kind of goofiness that only comes with an early morning pre-record of the Winged Wheel podcast. So full disclosure, this is recording on the morning of September 4th, and it's going to drop for you on Sunday, which is the earliest you'd be listening to it. So if anything big happens between now and then, that is 100% Steve Yzerman's fault or someone else in the NHL. But this is a remote episode because it is a Good in the Room episode. Max Bultman of the Athletic Detroit is joining us. Welcome to the Winged Wheel Podcast. Here to talk to you about all things Detroit Red Wings hockey, the world of the NHL, Evan's dwindling free time, and lots more. I'm one of your hosts, Ryan Hanna.
I'm Brad Crisco.
I'm Max Bultman.
And I'm Evan.
On this episode of the Winged Wheel Podcast, we're going to be talking about major changes that are coming a bit earlier in terms of the NHL CBA and how they relate to the Red Wings in Marco Kasper and Simon Edvinsson. We are going to be talking about those changes in general for the league and how Detroit might capitalize and what changes to expect. We're going to get into a little bit of the offseason's waning here. So we're going to take advantage of the opportunity to speculate baselessly. And we're going to do a little who says no for trades and things with the help of the listeners. And whatever else we get into before overtime. Very quickly, the Winged Wheel Podcast is primarily supported by our Patreon supporters. Patreon.com/Winged Wheel Podcast. If you want to support the show, you get access to benefits like our bonus overtime episodes, our bonus off-season content. We just recorded one last night, which will be up on Patreon very shortly here. And you're automatically entered into all of our giveaways. We give away 2 tickets to every Detroit Red Wings home game directly to our Patreon supporters and our Patreon exclusive Discord. So again, Patreon.com/Winged Wheel Podcast. Okay. So the CBA, which, was announced earlier this year, was extremely amicable between the NHL and the NHLPA. And so there was no kind of labor threat of labor stoppage or anything like that. But there were some pretty big notable changes that have now been moved up. And that's the story here today, which is there's 3 different kind of buckets, as Gary Bettman described it, as to when the CBA will take effect or components of it. Immediately, so starting the 25-26 season, there are going to be things that are going to start as of July 1st, 2026, so the end of next season, but before the puck drop on 26-27, and then things that will start with the actual signed start of the CBA, which is the start of the 26-27 NHL season. One of the big ones that we'll talk about first here, because it's relevant to the Red Wings, is that the term limit for extensions or contracts, I should say, doesn't take effect until that last bucket, so the start of the 26-27 season. So not until September 15th, I think it is, are contracts limited to 7 years, which means any contract signed between now and then, if a team is signing their own player, they can sign them still to an 8-year contract. So this is your last opportunity to buy, if you're a GM, an 8-year contract. And for the Red Wings, that's notable for 2 reasons. 1, Simon Edvinsson, who's already eligible for an extension. And 2, Marco Kasper, who as of July 1st will be eligible for an extension. That's a big opportunity for the Red Wings, right?
No doubt. And you think about, it went down to the wire with Lucas Raymond and Moritz Seider a year ago. This adds just like extra deadline pressure to that, right? And it's funny, the way you saw it play out, Lucas Raymond got the 8-year deal done. Moritz Seider, it went into camp, the first day of camp, and then the deal gets done, but it's only a 7-year deal. This time around, that would literally be the only possibility. It's either you get it done before September 15 or you're getting a 7-year deal, or shorter even for that matter. So yes, significant stakes next summer when you throw in the Kasper factor to that, when you throw in Edvinsson, 2 players who it could look, depending on what they do this year, they could challenge kind of the upper bound of the Red Wings cap structure. I mean, I think Kasper would have to have a really big year probably to get quite there. But with Edvinsson, if he has the kind of years that Moritz Seider has been having, you wonder if he could get into that 8 million plus range if the offense comes, if there's a little more power play time. My guess is he probably doesn't, but it's not out of the realm of possibility.
I don't even think he needs to have a Mo Seider type ascension to be in that conversation, just with the percentage of cap increase. And if you're talking about an 8-year deal in the projections, big minute munching, great defender who puts up 35 to 40 points, that's going to be 8 to 9.5 million all day. I think if Edvinsson repeats what he did this year without a significant jump, you're probably still talking in the $8-9 million range on a long-term deal. And I know I've, beat this drum already, but the Red Wings should absolutely do it. I'm hoping this creates some kind of mental trick where Edvinsson's like, no, I want that 8-year deal. And then he forces the deadline. The Red Wings overpay him. But I still think that's the better option for the Red Wings. And obviously the same principle would apply to Kasper. If he has a similar season to this year, even better. I mean, we've talked at length about where do the Red Wings benefits come from in the rebuild? Where is their luck? It hasn't come in the draft lottery. It hasn't come through any significant trades. The best break they've had is they got Raymond, Larkin, and Seider signed before everything went crazy with the cap increase, so they're locked in at a great number. If you get Kasper and Edvinsson in the same boat, same long-term deal, even if they're not quote-unquote super bargains, that's 5 pieces of your core, long-term, locked up, reasonable cap hit. That's the best possible scenario to come out of this for the Red Wings.
And you're right, Brad. When I said the probably not quite there, I was thinking on this year's cap, and it's going up by the same amount that this past year it did. So we're talking about a cap that's going to be 15 plus, maybe a little more than that, than where it was when Seider signed. So that is a big difference, and that percent-wise can absolutely put him in that stratosphere. It's a good point.
I saw a speculation about what a Thomas Harley contract could look like, and they were talking, anywhere from the high 8s to the low 10s kind of thing. And I know they weren't the exact same. Thomas Harley was Seider's draft year, if I remember correctly. But is that at all kind of a guiding star for Edvinsson and his agent, or, what Steve Yzerman is going to be looking at? Obviously, there's a connection with Jim Nill, not exactly relevant, but they don't handle things entirely differently. So an indicator for you, a litmus test as to what Edvinsson's could come in at?
Well, I think, that's kind of another example. Like Harley lives in that 45 plus. I think he had 50 points last year. So it's a little more offense, a little more power play than Detroit's given Edvinsson to date. But it would not shock me if that comes this year, right? Like we still think probably Erik Gustafsson is going to get a good amount of power play 2 time. But at the end of the season last year, like Edvinsson was out there. This is a guy you're heavily invested in. I think you want to see what he can do before Axel Sandin Pellikka enters the picture, and then you're going to be even more hard up for power play time. So if I'm the Red Wings, I would be giving Edvinsson a real opportunity to play meaningful time on the power play this season. And if that happens, like this is a guy who scored 31 points last season without a single power play point. I mean, if he gets 15 power play points on top of that, then you are talking about, like an identical statistical profile to Thomas Harley in terms of the counting stats. There's some underlying differences that I think come with good team versus average team. But
I think ultimately for me, it comes down to you want to see what Edvinsson's got on the power play, because I think it would actually benefit Mo Seider the most. Like, you need to find some time to get him off the ice playing less difficult minutes. I know the power play isn't considered the most difficult thing in the world, but you're taking energy from him to focus on other areas of the game, or when you need him to continue to match up against the best players on the other team. So if you could have Edvinsson running one of the power play units and Gustafsson, then kind of what you got there. You can give Seider a bit of a break. And then when Axel Sandin Pellikka comes in, what you have and where you can slot him in. Does Gustafsson fall out and ASP takes the second power play, or maybe Mo Seider comes back in then and Edvinsson focuses more on some of the 5-on-5 game. I think you just need to try it out and see what you have there, because Seider needs a bit of a break. You can't be just grinding him down every single year.
I've wondered too, like in Sweden, some of Sandin Pellikka's, a big chunk of his production came actually on the flank of the power play, or at least that's where a lot of the goals themselves were coming from. He would slide over. He's got a big one-timer shot there from the left circle, and he can rip it from there. I've wondered, would the Red Wings ever go 3 defensemen between the 2 power plays in order to make full use of them? Now, you can argue, is that really, like, the Red Wings have right shooters from that circle who were really good. Like, they have Alex DeBrincat, they have Lucas Raymond. Like, DeBrincat's already playing the goal line because they have Lucas Raymond there. Michael Brandsegg-Nygard also on the way. I think you're going to want that one-timer on the circle. So my guess is Pellikka's going to have to be from up top. And then that does pose like some questions of, is somebody getting bumped out of the rotation here? But it's going to be fascinating to watch unfold. One more thing on the Harley thing. I've just looked. Harley, actually, the goal scoring is a big differentiator. 15, 16 goals for him. That is a big number that is going to translate to contracts.
Overall, I brought this topic in and said, how big of an advantage is this for Detroit? And I think it is fair to say that it's somewhat of an advantage. But, we can't speak out of both sides of our mouths here on this podcast, because when Seider's contract came in, we said, it would have been nice to have 8 years, but 7 is still really great. So if it's not a full 8-year contract, or if they do a full 8-year contract, we can't say that extra year is, a world-beating effect and advantage for the Red Wings ledger. Their cap sheet is still extremely strong because of how they have their core locked up. They have Raymond and Seider on phenomenal deals, and anyone who is paying attention and knows the remotest? Jeez, it's early. The most remote amount of puck knows that those contracts were good. Larkin's deal is great. You have room to play with. Now, I'm not saying to sign a bad contract, but let's say Kasper or Edvinsson's agents are like, hey, it's not the old school way of doing it, but look how the cap's going up. If you're not getting the number you want on a long-term deal, we're going short-term here. And we'll take a little bit of a lump on the term, so we're not going to walk right to unrestricted free agency because Steve Yzerman won't let us do that. But you're going to take less money, you're going to go shorter term, and we're going to redo this bet in X amount of years, 2 years, 4 years, whatever it is. And that could be how this shakes out, and it's not the end of the world. That said, the question is now, how much does the Red Wings weigh, if that's a thing? It's silly to call that a thing for a team that's not made the playoffs in a decade, but the Red Wings weigh the aura of an original six team, the aura of the Steve Yzerman run team. Does that kind of pull players into the orbit of, yep, let's all play nice, get our money, but still fit nicely into the team's cap structure or internal cap, as long as Yzerman tries to hold that? Or is that naive and far too much through Red Wings colored lenses there?
I just don't think you can sell it without winning. I mean, if you make the playoffs, you can try to make that case. You can go to these guys and say, look, you've seen what it's like to not win. You've seen what it's like to win. In order to win, everyone's got to take a sacrifice, be part of that sacrifice so we can keep this group together and keep the momentum going. That's a pitch you can only make if the team is winning. If the team is not winning, I don't know how you sell that. And so we talked about this with free agency. Like it's a little bit of a self, I don't know which comes first, but it kind of self-propels once you're there. Once you're good, players want to take the discount to keep it together and to come play for you. But how do you get them to do that and get good when you haven't done it yet? It's the same kind of idea for the internal version of it.
When I watch how things played out with Raymond and Seider, like as much as they took deals that were really great for the team, and that's something that Red Wings fans can take comfort in, I also saw them, like you said, Max, go down to the wire. And that's why I'm not really surprised to see Edvinsson not extended yet. There hasn't really been too much noise around that either. Not to say there's nothing in terms of talks or progress, but it's not exactly been a burning fire so far.
Also,
and
has
so,
just been Yzerman's style. Like he's definitely been a get all the data you can get, especially if you're going to go a long-term deal, get all the data you can get, right? There are deals that don't go well. They get signed early and you think, oh, you got your long-term. I'm thinking of, Josh Norris. I don't know that played out particularly well for the Ottawa Senators. And when they signed it, I think you would have said, oh, smart move, get him locked up early. It doesn't always work that way. And what's up?
I'm not right about a lot, but I remember when they signed that deal, I was like, that guy's injured always. How are you going to give him that much money?
Yeah. And so like Yzerman has time and again been like, we're going to get all the data we can get before we go with the long-term deal. And frankly, if I'm Simon Edvinsson, I am absolutely waiting the full season. Like it would be very hard to even consider signing in when you've had 1 year. It was that good, but there's so much more in there, especially on the things that get you paid. I would have been shocked if he had done a deal this summer.
There are two things that possibly could drive that. One, Simon Edvinsson's just all in on the team, the Red Wings, the boys winning in Hockeytown. And he's like, you know what, agent, I know you're telling me best practice is to wait and to use my leverage here, but I want to just get this done. Or the Red Wings make him a salary offer that justifies him not waiting any longer. They're like, hey, we'll give you the 8 years and we'll give you, your ask or whatever for 8 years. Because, I mean, unless the ask is outrageous, the cap going up as much as it is means that you have that margin to play with. Neither one of those things seems likely to me. And that's not the end of the world, I should say. And then we're going to be playing out the same process starting July 1 of next year with Marco Kasper, although you have then from July 1 till September 15th of 2026 to get him at 8 years as opposed to a maximum 7. So that one has a little bit more urgency, and we'll see how Yzerman feels about that.
Yeah, that's the one that has the incentive to deviate from your approach, because there's a clear reason why. You want the extra year? This is your window. You can have the extra year or you can have the extra data. You can't have both. Pick one. It'll be fascinating.
I think there's going to be obviously a lot of eyes on how Marco Kasper takes another step this year, but there's going to be a lot of eyes on how, Matthew Knies plays into his new contract and things like that. Like there's, whether or not you think they're fair comparisons, those two players and roles and guys in and around that space are going to be tied to each other to see how that, I don't want to call him a support player, but, not number one center star scoring winger or anything like that, but a guy who very obviously has the juice and your team isn't the same without him. And he's young. So really interesting to see. There's people who grew up in previous generations of the NHL who are like pulling their hair out. Like, why do all these young kids in RFAs have so much leverage? Like, this is such a departure from years past in the NHL where this is even a conversation.
I think this is better. I would be curious to hear what you guys think of this, but I remember in the original Mitch Marner contract saga thinking about this, and for a long time in the NHL, you're right, the teams got the deal while the players were in their prime, and then they had to pay for past performance right at the time the cliff was coming. And it probably met an equilibrium that was manageable, at least for some amount of time. But I just think this is so preferable that you pay the guy for what he's doing right now, and then there's not the same expectation to give. We're seeing what John Tavares would never have taken the contract that he just took in a world where he had been squeezed, so hard in his RFA and even his early UFA. Like, if you had to pay him for his past performance right now, the Leafs would be cooked. Instead, he's able to take that $4 million deal to stick around. I think about the Joe Pavelski one in Dallas. Like, I think this is a better way.
I think it's not even quite that deep. And I agree with what you're saying. I just think front offices have gotten smarter. They know when players' primes are now, and they're willing to take the risk. That's I think it comes down to. It's like, you pointed out Josh Norris, and that's a perfectly valid example of when it goes wrong. But if you go through the last 10 to 15 years, there are way more success stories of getting that guy locked up before he takes off, before he enters his prime. And then after that, well, we've already paid you a bunch of money. We're going to sign you to a new contract again. But now we know truly what you're worth. And that's why, McKinnon goes from $6 million to $14 million, because they took a gamble on him before he broke out. And then they're like, okay, we know you're an established superstar now. We got no problem paying you whatever you want. And nobody's going to sit here and say that's a bad contract for the Avs. Nobody's going to sit here and say Draisaitl's a bad contract for the Oilers. It's just there's enough data and history to show front offices what the best path is to building a contender under the salary cap world. Because to us, it feels like it's been around forever, but with how long contracts are, it was going to take 10 to 15 years before people figured out what the right formula is. And now that everybody's got a pretty good idea, I think the market's just reset to better data.
I do think, though, when you talk about the success stories with this, okay, Nathan McKinnon hadn't broken through when he signed what became the most valuable contract in the NHL, but he was still really good. He was still a number one overall pick. Jack Hughes, there was a lot of indication that it was going to happen. Quentin Byfield, even, maybe a little less data, but the physical tools, I think you just got to be that sure about a guy. And frankly, I think you could be that sure about Simon Edvinsson. I mean, he has the same kind of pedigree. He's shown you, it's not a long sample, but in a full NHL season, what he can be at the front end. And I think we all agree Simon Edvinsson has not come close to even his ceiling yet. And where he's at already is a really, really valuable 21, 22 minute a night defenseman. And I would bet on him today. I'm not saying I wouldn't do it. I'm just saying it's not how they've done it, and it's not how it would be in his interest to do it. So even Kasper, you might question, is the offense going to be where it was in the second half? I don't think you're questioning that this guy's going to be a really valuable heart and soul piece of your team for a lot of years to come, right? You don't have to worry about giving him $6.5, $7 million. There was a comp that came on. I'm trying to think. I tweeted this is the first realistic comp for Marco Kasper. Frank Nazar, right? I don't think Chicago has major worries about that, because Nazar doesn't actually need to become a star producer or anything like that for that contract to be worth it at the level that it is. So I think you could justify it with Kasper off of certainly what he's going to do in a year. You're going to know a lot. But even if there is a little flattening and it's just more 45 to 50 points or something, as opposed to the 57, 58 point pace he was on last year, I still lock him in long term, because he's going to be a big part of what you're doing for that long.
All right, so we'll see how. I mean, we're going to be talking about those potential extensions throughout the year until Edvinsson's happens, and then starting July 1, Kasper's conversation is going to pick up. Let's jump over to the other big kind of change that caught some teams out. People suspected it might happen, but the NHL did confirm it, that the new playoff salary cap is taking effect starting this season. So the gist of it is that your 20-man roster has to be cap compliant every night of the playoffs, whoever you have on your active roster. So, your expanded roster, you can have whoever on it like that. They're not going to be counting guys who are sitting up in the press box or anything, black aces, things like that. But whoever is on the ice, you have to have a salary cap compliant team. So there's no more 17 million over 18 million over the cap Kucherov hats or anything like that. And people are looking at the Florida Panthers to say, okay, is your Matthew Tkachuk gamble, did that fail? And now you have to dump, $3-4 million in salary at some point. Teams are looking at Evan Rodrigues again. His name's coming up. What are teams going to do? Because this has potentially caught a lot of teams out who do, I don't want to say game the system, but they utilize the rules, to put it diplomatically. The Floridas, the Vegases, the Tampa Bays. Is this going to cause a shakeup come early spring?
I think it will a little bit, but not dramatically. First of all, I know it doesn't apply necessarily to this season, but for future seasons under this rule, where the amount of money teams can put on LTIR isn't as much as it used to be anyway. So you can't.
That got moved up to this season as well.
Did it? Perfect.
Yeah.
So then in going forward fully, teams can't carry, call it 11 million in dead cap on one contract like they used to, because now it's only going to be that prorated amount. But even at that, if you're Florida and you're cap compliant, well, Matthew Tkachuk's on LTIR, and then by the time he comes back, say Sam Bennett gets hurt and he's down, he's in LTIR, and so you have no reason at that point to trade Evan Rodrigues, and they're looking forward to the playoffs going, this team won't be cap compliant in the playoffs. A better solution for Florida, specifically a contender, isn't to trade Evan Rodrigues. It's just he might get scratched some nights in the playoffs. And okay, well now Nico Mikola's playing like crap. He's getting scratched. Oh, Sam Bennett's got a bone bruise. Take a night off. Like, they just might scratch decent players on a nightly basis to remain cap compliant. I know we were talking about it before recording. If Detroit made the playoffs right now and they were in the same situation, because say Larkin was hurt for a good chunk of the season on LTIR, they trade someone at the deadline, they get another new player in, and all of a sudden they're going into the first game of the playoffs way over the cap, and they call it they're $5 million over the cap. Sorry, JT Compher, you're not playing tonight. And as much as we all like JT Compher, I think we can all agree JT Compher isn't making or breaking their playoff chances. So it's not like they have to scratch Mo Seider or Lucas Raymond to be cap compliant. It's who's got the most money for the least bang for the buck. That guy's probably not playing that night. So you still get the benefit through the regular season. And yeah, it's going to create some controversy. It's going to piss some guys off. But if you're a true Stanley Cup contender, you want as many options as you can on the roster. You're not just going to dump these guys for the sake of it.
Yeah, I was going around scrolling looking for who are the obvious who is threatened by this. And I probably shouldn't be surprised, but there's just not very many really bad contracts on good teams, right? That's kind of how you get good. You can look at I went to Dallas and I was like, yeah, Tyler Seguin at 9.25 is high, but he's still a good enough player that I don't think Dallas would really be tempted to play the gamble and have to do that. Honestly, the one I found that felt like, yeah, feels the most plausible was Andre Palat in New Jersey at $6 million for, a guy who's had less than 30 points last season. And yet Palat is such a playoff kind of player. They might feel like, nah, it's not worth it. We got to keep Palat in because he's been there, done that. He kind of has that style of game. So, I think Brad's exactly right. I think that's the workaround. If you really are trying to play the games and you have an opportunity that you're like, we could have made this work under the old rules. Well, you can still kind of make it work. It's just going to mean scratching a guy that you haven't had to scratch the last couple of years. And there are enough players that I think it's a viable workaround. It's just not as prevalent as I maybe would have guessed an hour ago.
And there's also a little bit of an advantage, a little bit of a help baked in for these contenders because we hear all these injury stories throughout the playoffs and teams don't want to rest guys because we got to win, we got to go. But all of a sudden, if you're Florida and a Sam Reinhart's got a tweaked ankle, okay, well, we have to scratch someone tonight anyway because we're over the cap. Probably not the worst idea to give that guy a break. And then, of course, if they lose that game and their back's against the wall, okay, he's playing through it from that point on. But all of a sudden now, maybe these contenders who load manage well throughout the playoffs and around the cap structure have some guys that might be more rested than they otherwise would be going into the conference finals or the finals. Obviously, they wouldn't want to do that. The players wouldn't want to do it. But, you talk about unintended consequences. That can work in the positive a little bit.
I think I agree with both of you guys that this isn't going to be some earth-shattering thing, but I will say if there is going to be some kind of scramble back to getting into line, it'll be this year. Obviously, as teams, some teams in the NHL don't plan this far out, and you can tell by the way they conduct themselves, but the good ones do. And you can already see some quotes and stuff from the GMs. I know there was a piece in The Athletic about GM saying, yeah, we're going to have to go back to the drawing board once we're all back together at the start of the season here, which is essentially now. And figure out how we're going to adjust our approach. And ultimately, to me, what I look at, this isn't even from a Red Wings perspective of, they could peel a good player off of a team who needs a dumb cap, but rather just the health of the league. No pun intended. The LTIR thing. I think those rules were it just became a bastardization of what the spirit of that rule was. And no team was doing anything any more or less untoward that the others were doing. But LTIR didn't mean save your players who didn't need their regular season stats and keep them fresh for the playoffs so you can go and time things right. Like, that's just not what it's intended for. So I like that you're limiting how much a team can be rewarded for having an injured player, especially if they have a big salary and it's, you know, your player wants to play games and have surgery away later in the summer or in the season than they otherwise would have, then there's no real advantage to you anymore. And that's what I think this should be. It is going to expose the grind of the 84 now game season if it hasn't already been exposed, but that's a whole different conversation.
Yeah, I think this is the one that Ken Holland has been pushing for quite some time, the version of the solution. I mean, the others probably involve, like, if you're not dressed for the last game of the regular season or whatever, or if you're not dressed in a game, you know, after the trade deadline, you have to miss the first round or something like that. And that, you know, that can work too in its own way, but it's definitely more risk of punishing a legitimately injured player than, you know, this version of it is. So I think this is kind of the most amicable solution of the options.
You're never going to be able to create an airtight system, right? Like, we always thought the salary cap was going to be this way of controlling the overspending and keeping parity in the league, and then GMs find a way to game the system. I think this is closing another door. One thing I'm super curious about is how it impacts the trade deadline in a league that famously loves to not have superstars moving around. I'm very curious how, if this quiets down trade deadline or, you know, leading up to trade deadline, because at the end of the day, fans want to see their team win. And if they can load up on elite talent, I think fans want to see that. You know, people hate Vegas because they're always in on every single elite player that is becoming available. Whereas Vegas fans love it because they're going to always be making a deep run or hoping to make a deep run. So I'm very curious how this will impact player transactions going forward.
The funny thing is, and you make a good point there, is I actually don't think it's going to impact player transactions that much because, again, and Max alluded to it earlier, I don't think we fully appreciate just how much the cap is going up in the next couple of years. This season specifically might be a little different, but when you look at like the actual millions of dollars that this cap jumps every year, there's not going to be that many teams that are fully capped out. We saw it this offseason. There was a dozen teams willing to spend to the cap that couldn't because the players just signed elsewhere and there was nothing left for them to sign. Like, we obviously come from that on a Red Wings angle, but the teams that are truly capped right now were the ones that made their deals beforehand, although Marner was just beforehand, but Dallas getting Rantanen and all that. If the Red Wings added Nikolai Ehlers to the exact contract plus $500,000 that Carolina just signed him to, the Red Wings would still have cap space. Like, so I think that there's still going to be a ton of flexibility, but I don't think it's going to be quite as circumstantial as it used to be, where Vegas could always load up because Mark Stone got hurt, or Tampa could load up because this guy got hurt. I think teams can load up because they're going to have the cap space. And yeah, there's always going to be, call it 4, 5, 6 teams that won't be able to because they'll be up against the cap, but everybody else will. I think what it changes at the deadline isn't necessarily the volume of activity, but who's going to be involved. Because if you are the Dallas Stars going into this season and you're capped out at the trade deadline and you know that you have to field, you might not be so inclined to go out and trade for a $9 million player because, like Max alluded, it's like, well, then we're just scratching Tyler Seguin in the playoffs. And do we want to go give up a first or a second round pick or whatever the premium assets are when we're going to end up scratching a good player anyway? Whereas now that second tier of teams who maybe aren't in the Dallas, Vegas, Toronto, Florida tier, but have cap space, go, we can get that guy now. We all of a sudden are the team with cap space that can make this move. And maybe it puts us up in that tier with them. Maybe it doesn't. But all of a sudden, we're thinking about it. Whereas how many of those teams would look at it and go, we're losing to Dallas, Colorado, Vegas. Like, we're just not getting the guy. They're going to outbid us. They're better than us. Like, the player's not going to sign an extension with them, et cetera, et cetera. All these circumstances that come up year after year after year. I actually think it might level the playing field in a small, albeit fun way.
And contributing to that is the loss of the broker teams, right? Like another rule that's like, this should not meaningfully affect much, but if anything, it will just make it so that the team that only has that small sliver of cap space can't also get, and now they get this guy for $1.5 million because he was double retained by, some team that got a 5th round pick that's never going to amount to anything or whatever. So between those two small things, Brad, I think it does add up to a meaningful difference in, who can bid for players, which is how the cap was intended to be. We'll see. They'll find other workarounds, but we'll see how long it takes them to do that.
All right, I'm going to butt in here for a very quick announcement, and we are actually going to cut to a pre-recorded version of this announcement. So back after this. So splicing this in, but we are excited to announce that our 3rd annual Winged Wheel Podcast Night with the Grand Rapids Griffins is happening on Saturday, January 17th at Van Andel with the Griffins. It's the game against Milwaukee. We are extremely, extremely excited to be running this back. We have very cool co-branded merch coming for you. Stay tuned on that. Ticket sales are coming soon. Make sure if you are getting tickets to that game, you have to get it through the link that we post. So again, Saturday, January 17th, 2026, Winged Wheel Podcast Night with the Grand Rapids Griffins. There's going to be celebrity guest stars and a lot else planned for you that weekend in Grand Rapids. Stay tuned. Evan, we actually were working on a surprise for you for this, and then you rudely delayed us.
So I gave you more time.
You did, but we have it ready for you. So if Mel's ready, she can now come in and bring Evan his surprise. So we have some new merch to announce as well. And
hell yeah. Hell yeah.
It is a Winged Wheel Podcast hat.
Now I get why you said I have to take off my daddy cap.
That's right. Because, now permanently you are, of course, daddy. But the Winged Wheel Podcast is launching some new apparel, Evan inspired. Grand Rapids Griffins games are some of Evan's favorites because of $2 beer and hot dog night. And so we have the Winged Wheel Podcast official Bad Day to Be a Hot Dog hat.
It might be a little chilly in January to wear this, but it will be coming with me.
Oh, absolutely.
I don't know if I've ever shared this piece of information. I need that in a kid size because Hank is just like Evan with hot dogs.
Oh, I witnessed what happened at that arena last year.
Yeah, those hot dogs you brought over, I never got one of them.
They had a city council meeting after they saw Evan and Hank in the same arena last year. Yeah, we'll get that. Also, what do you mean in kid size? Hank has your head. You need him in an adult medium.
That's fair.
Bad Day to Be a Hot Dog, Saturday, January 17th, Winged Wheel Podcast, Grand Rapids Griffins. Stay tuned. Single game tickets are already on sale. Make sure you buy as part of the Winged Wheel Podcast Night package. The link will be in the description of this episode. We have a really, really, really cool piece of co-branded merch this time around. It is a Winged Wheel Podcast and Grand Rapids Griffins co-branded puck with a fun twist on some of them as well. And we are using our special anniversary logos as well. So we have our 10-year logo. The Griffins have their 30-year logo. It is a limited edition co-branded puck. It's also Old Time Hockey Night with the Griffins at Van Andel. So if you buy as part of the Winged Wheel Podcast Night package, you get access to the pregame live show featuring special guests from the Griffins and more. You get access, obviously, to the game, the meet and greet with us, the hosts, and you get the item from the Old Time Hockey Night, so you'll get a sweet vintage hat. We've seen them. They're excellent. So again, tickets are on sale now. Get them fast. When they go, they're gone. Link is in the description. With that, we are going to take a quick break here on this episode of the Winged Wheel Podcast to hear a word from our sponsors. Back to school season always sneaks up. Suddenly your schedule's packed and the last thing you've got time for is putting together a proper dinner. Instead of defaulting to drive-through meals or cereal at midnight, we've been leaning on Tempo. It's the convenient way to keep real food in the mix when life's chaotic. The meals are actually impressive. Portioned, balanced, and made with real ingredients. The lemon butter pork chop was a standout, and the lightened up pasta bake honestly felt like comfort food without the "why did I just eat that" guilt. And both were ready in just 3 minutes. With more than 20 rotating options each week, Tempo makes it easy to switch things up without ever falling into a rut. Everything shows up fresh, single serve, and ready to heat, which means no wasted time and no excuses for skipping a decent meal, even when you're like Evan and your firstborn son came 10 weeks early. For a limited time, Tempo is offering our listeners 60% off your first box. Go to tempomeals.com/wingedwheel. That's tempomeals.com/wingedwheel for 60% off your first box. tempomeals.com/wingedwheel. Rules and restrictions may apply. Welcome back. Evan, that bad day to be a hot dog hat is... Your excitement putting that on was probably as excited as I've ever seen you, including the birth of your son and you shooting 4 under in your first round back.
You absolutely know I'll be wearing this hat to Grand Rapids in January, especially for the Friday night game.
They are going to be... Oh, and we should even say we have some other special events planned for that weekend in Grand Rapids, so stay tuned. We have some other cool stuff coming your way, but you know you're going to see like 4 or 5 of those hats around the arena by then, because they're going to go on sale in the Wind Wheel podcast shop soon. So get your bad day to be a hot dog hat and channel your inner Evan.
Are you guys going to actually take my food recommendations in Grand Rapids this time, or are you just going to go to the literal closest restaurant to the arena again?
Did we not do it last time? We went to your
Max
lunch
told
suggestion.
us one. Told us a bunch, and then I just made up one that I thought he told us, and when I was like, "Oh, this is really good." He's like, "I didn't tell you about that one."
Yeah, that is what happened too.
What was it? Where did you go?
It was one of the breweries. I can't remember. Oh,
Yeah.
This is great content. I can't remember the name of the brewery, but it was awesome. The food was really good.
We just actually walked into someone's living room, and Grand Rapids is such a gracious city that they were just like, "All right, cool."
Pretty
And
much.
they fed us. It was really
That's
good.
my friend Andrew. He's great.
Go to Andrew's place. All lowercase. All right. This next segment is just for fun. So we pulled on some suggestions from our Patreon supporters, as well as we're going to pull from our own brains here, but it's no secret that the Red Wings are in need of a move if they want to move into contention or serious conversation for contention for a playoff spot with some more certainty. So we asked for a who says no proposal from our listeners. And a lot of these will be familiar, and I wonder if we're going to get into the realm of the ridiculous sooner rather than later, but we'll see what we come up with. So let's get into the who says no. This one's from Jack's Dads. Says, what about Moose, so Rasmussen, Carter Bear, and a 2026 protected first for Kyle Connor? Who says no to that deal? Because Connor and Winnipeg are supposedly in negotiations right now, as you would expect, but nothing's solidified.
With or without extension in place?
I think for this...
Because that is going to be the deal breaker one way or the other for me.
Yeah, let's say it comes with it and understanding that there will be an extension.
Then I would do this, because what I'm looking at here is what are you giving up in Carter Bear's likely prime versus what is Kyle Connor going to be in his regression. And I still think a 33, 34-year-old Kyle Connor is going to be a 30, 35 goal guy, 70, 75 point guy, which is probably Carter Bear's ceiling if everything goes right for him. So this is one of those trades where I'm taking the certainty because they play the same position. And yeah, you're losing out on the contract, the entry-level contract, which I know often gets overlooked in deals like this. And I'm a big Carter Bear believer. But at some point, the Red Wings need some certainty in a star-level player. And I think you probably still get 3 close to peak years out of Kyle Connor before the regression starts. But I still think that regression is a very good player.
Yeah, and I think this is what it would take. So I think good job by whoever submitted this one on the proposal. Very realistic ask. It would be tough. I think the toughest thing would be giving up the sandpaper element that Bear brings, right? Because as much as Connor brings more offense, the Red Wings also need kind of a specific type of offense that they lack. And I think Bear is a little more aligned to it. But to Brad's point, it's certainty versus projection. And I can think Carter Bear is going to be a 60 to 70 point, gritty winger who can threaten 30 goals in some years. I can know Kyle Connor on day one is a 70 point, 30 plus goal with the potential to be like a 45 plus goal guy. He's done that in the NHL. So I think this is what it would take. I think it's inaccurate. I don't think anyone says no.
Do you sub in? I think if you're saying yes to Bear, inherently you are saying yes to MBN as well. So Brandsegg-Nygard fits a lot of the same profile there. Would you sub in a Nate Danielson, or does that center position move into the realm of uncomfortable for you too much if you're the Red Wings?
again, I think realistic. Like that's probably what it would take. I think if you're the Red Wings and you have Dylan Larkin and Marco Kasper down the middle, you have to at least give that long, hard thought. Maybe it makes you squeamish about how much you're also giving up on top of Danielson, like the 26th first. But if you're trading for Kyle Connor, you think you're picking outside the top 16. So maybe that helps. But yeah, I mean, I like Danielson as like the top prospect there. So I guess it gets a little harder to say yes to. But again, I think this is realistic for what the conversations would be between Detroit and Winnipeg.
He had another suggestion here, and I really hate this one. Eric Gustafsson in a 2027 completely unprotected first-round pick for, at maximum retention possible, Erik Karlsson.
Listen, I love Erik Karlsson, but there is not a trade that exists right now where I'm giving up an unprotected 2026 first.
Oh, there are some trades
for Karlsson. Like that.
No, yeah,
even at the retention, that's what you're paying for in that deal. You'd be giving up the first because Pittsburgh would be retaining like $10 million over 2 years, which again, that's correct value. That's what Toronto had to do to get rid of Patrick Marleau, and then that's what got Carolina, Seth Jarvis. But I would not do that deal. I think Detroit says no.
Yeah, I'm in the camp of the Red Wings have so much cap space. If we're getting Erik Karlsson, I'd rather take him at full pop and give up nothing, and then just absorb it for the year too. If you got to unload a comfort or something to do it, fine. Like, I think that's the better path. Don't give Pittsburgh a premium to retain $5 million. You're probably better served unloading $5 million elsewhere off your roster to acquire Erik Karlsson.
So this one's from Return of Jambo, says 2026 first top 5 protected, Soderblom and Buyam for Rasmus Andersson. And I think with this one, you would have to imagine extension in place as well, or the understanding that there would be an extension.
So I'm going to say Red Wings say no, because I personally say no to this. Understanding this is market value. This is probably pretty close to what you have to give up for Rasmus Andersson. This just falls to me personally. I'm not as high on Rasmus Andersson as everybody else. He's a good defenseman, a really good defenseman. He's not a great defenseman. And this is like premium asset paying price. And I'm just not giving that for Rasmus Andersson.
Aren't you the guy that started Rasmus Andersson fever in this fan base 2 years ago?
No, I absolutely was not.
I think it was him. I have absolutely no recollection of this, but I just love to blame Brad for things. Honestly, Max, I think it was me. If I have to, it might have been me.
All right. Well, I hope you're proud of yourself. I'm with Brad. It's a no.
Oh, I'm sorry that I want a right shot defenseman who can play right shot defense, Evan. Why am I saying Evan?
Why me?
Yeah, Evan. Right.
What the hell?
Idiot.
I'm the only person who maybe would be on your side.
It's funny to watch Andersson actually end up on the trade rumor mill, because Red Wings fans have been asking me, and I think you guys started it, about him for 2 years, and I've had to be like, why are we talking about him? Why do you think he's available? And only now that he's coming available is it actually like a valid discussion point. I still wouldn't do it. He is a really good player for sure, but I think that's too much to give up.
Maybe you guys can help me out here, but why would the Red Wings be interested in acquiring a defenseman? Like, you've got ASP coming. You are witnessing the evolution and the coming out of Simon Edvinsson. You're locking up your core group. Like, you don't want to be spending, what's Rasmus Andersson making? Like,
oh, he'll be making a lot more soon.
Like, he's going to be and then you still have to pay Edvinsson this year. Then you almost certainly are going to have to pay ASP a big contract. Like, why do you want another defenseman? You see the future in your defensive core. You should be insulating those guys with, lunch pail type defensemen.
I think the Red Wings absolutely should be in the market for a defenseman, but I think the Red Wings are one of the very, very few teams in the league. They're pretty okay on the right side. Between Seider and ASP coming, Johansson can play as off wing. It's once you get past Edvinsson on the left side long term, there's nothing but a bunch of bottom pair D there. I think they have a pretty big need for a top 4 defenseman. I would just argue it's on the other side.
Well, right now it's on the right side. For this year, it's on the right side, right? And that's why you hear the Erik Karlsson stuff, because he actually would fit as a bridge to ASP. The argument for it would be that if you're playing Axel Sandin-Pellikka on the third pair, maybe it's not like maximizing the investment and getting the 20 minutes a night from the guy you took in the first round, but he's insulated better. He probably is maximized playing, a third pair role at evens and then huge role on power play that ends up getting him, into that 20-minute a night range. That's the argument for a righty.
Yeah, I like the idea of a short-term righty substitute. We're like long-term, which is if you're giving up premium assets, it better be long-term. And that's where I waffle on the Anderson. Because I'm okay. I think ASP plays on the second pair, but circling back to my point about you need a high-end left shot D, because in my perfect reality, the top four long-term is Mo Seider and fill in the blank here, Simon Edvinsson and ASP, because Edvinsson is the exact type of defenseman you want to play with ASP. He's huge. He's mobile. He can handle the defensive load. He's more than capable with the puck that he's not going to look uncomfortable next to someone as gifted with the puck as ASP. They'll be able to play off each other. I think that's a perfect second pair long term, but then it creates this giant hole next to Moritz Seider that right now I don't know where that solution's coming from.
That's why we felt Vladislav Gavrikov was such a good option for them in free agency, because you slot Gavrikov and Seider and you go, here you go. You guys are gonna take toughest minutes in the NHL for the next 5 years. And then you got Edvinsson to shepherd Pellikka along when he gets there. But alas, that didn't happen. Now you're still looking.
I'm going to yell into the void here, and I'm going to acknowledge that I'm going to be yelling at like my past self as well, because I'm guilty of what I'm about to talk about. But we get too cute when we think about roster construction. I think genuinely we get too cute with it. And we always say what teams are rewarded, the ones who go for it, the ones who just go out and get good players and figure it out later. The Vegases, the Tampas, the teams where it's like, of course you're in on that name. How are you even going to fit that into the cap? And how are you even going to fit that into your roster? And then it's that Twitter meme is like, oh, alas, he wriggled his way out of that one again. Like, that's what it is. And we're like, oh, but ASP is going to play second pair, and you can have that guy play third pair, but that's not the best. Oh my God, this defense is terrible. This defense is terrible. Just get the good players. We'll figure it out after. Oh, no, we have too many good right shot defensemen. You know what people do when they have that? They trade one, or they flip someone to the offside, and great, they're only playing at 91% of their potential talent, but you have an unreal, right shot defenseman playing on the left side for a little bit. Who cares? There's injuries. ASP's not guaranteed yet. I'm sorry for yelling at you guys. I'm really emphatic about this, but it's like I've watched this defense be awful for so long, and patrons who listen to our recent bonus episode that we just posted are going to know we just did an exercise where we look back at the last decade of defensemen. You're not working with a lot. So honestly, the cap has gone up already by infinity dollars. You had this space. Just get the good defensemen. That's why the Red Wings should be in the market for defensemen. And the same goes for forwards, but they've had good forwards too. They've had the Raymond, they've had the DeBrincat, they've had Kasper come out. Kane has been a revelation in his old age. We need something else on defense, man.
I'm with you on that. I mean, the prime Tampa, the dynastic Tampa, if I'm allowed to use that word. Laz is in my head about what counts as a dynasty. But the elite Tampa teams that went to 3 straight cups. I mean, it was the left side was Hedman, McDonough, then Mikhail Sergachev. You find ways to sprinkle in these other guys, and I think is an ideal way to break Axel Sandin-Pellikka into the NHL. Is you're playing a lot of minutes in the third pair, and sometimes we move you up to the second, and we give you a lot of time on the power play, and by the end of the night you're at 20 minutes, but technically you're on the third pair. But that's because the team is this thing called good, and that is something to aspire to.
I agree with both of you fully. My point, and I'm going to circle this all the way back to the original point, I don't think Rasmus Andersson's that guy. That's my only argument against that. If the best defenseman you can get's a righty, I'm not going to say no. You go do it, and then you just have this loaded right side like Tampa had on the left, and you deal with it however you have to deal with it. And I'm not even worried about the contract as much with Andersson. I'm a little concerned, but with how much the cap's going up, I don't care that much anymore. Genuinely, with Rasmus Andersson specifically, it comes down to me, what are you giving up to get him? And that's where it becomes a no for me.
The trade return, I'll concede, like that actually matters a lot, because you are giving up the talent going the other way. So I'm not arguing that. I will say, whether or not you think he's fully that guy or the best option available, talent is already thin in this league at 32 teams. We are going to go to 34, and then we are going to go to 36. So with the Red Wings not winning right now, so they are already missing out on a lot of talent who aren't interested in coming to Detroit because this isn't a winning team at the moment. You can't say, I have to hold out for the best person. We have to hold out for that guy at each position, because Gavrikov never even looked at Detroit on the map. And we talked about him for months, if not a year. So if Rasmus Andersson is a net add, or whoever you want to put as a placeholder for Rasmus Andersson as to who he'd be replaced on the roster, then to me, that is the only box that needs to be checked. Then you get into what are you giving in return? And that's all a very fair point. So I completely concede that to you, Brad. But to me, if you are at all a good defenseman at this point, congratulations. You're welcome on the Detroit Red Wings. I would love to have the problem of you have too many, good players and you're up against the cap. Like, oh yeah, I pity Dallas for sure. I would love to have Dallas's problem right now. They could do something really stupid, but it's a much bigger, better problem to have too many good players up against the cap.
He's going to Vegas, right?
Oh, absolutely he is. You know what? At least right now, we're not talking about Marner after he left our team. Like the Toronto media right now, what all they're talking about right now, instead of who they're going to replace Marner with, is Marner's comments after he went to Vegas, and that's like the lowest of lows.
More venom, Marner's return to Toronto or Tavares? I mean, they literally threw snakes, so maybe but Tavares' return to the island, or will there be more venom for Marner's return to Toronto?
I think they might make him cry.
I think the Tavares one's going to be worse, because the funny thing is, the more Leaf fans I talk to, not that many of them seem all that pissed at Marner. Like, it's a media thing that's driving it. Because if you read that Marner review in text, it sounded awful, but when you watch the video, he almost said it in passing. Like, and obviously they're mad at him for folding in the playoffs every year, but I don't feel that the fan base has this we're gonna throw eggs and tomatoes at him on the ice type vibe. He's gonna get booed. I think it's gonna be very similar to when Eichel went back to Buffalo. So not quite that Tavares level. It'll be bad, but not quite that bad.
Eichel's a better comp. I like that.
Listen, if I'm a Leaf fan and one of the players who's a homegrown kid we draft, I'm booing him. I paid hundreds of dollars for those tickets. I'm booing. I'm going to boo him as hard as I possibly can.
It's a little bit of a catch-22 for them, because with the price of groceries and $300 for standing room tickets at the Leafs Arena, that's going to be a hard sell for you to then throw eggs and tomatoes. But you are going to be so far away with the $300 that you spent for standing room tickets. Eggs and tomatoes are maybe the only way to make your voice heard, because your voice won't reach the ice. So, all right, one more here.
I could not figure out where groceries was going to factor into that. You landed it, but I could not figure out why groceries were getting thrown into the conversation.
Brother, let me tell you, just barely did I land that. Thank God you guys are patient with me. D-Boss is D-Boss. This one we've talked about a million times, but we can't ignore it because it's not resolved yet. ASP, Rasmussen, and a 2026 second for Mason McTavish. Who says no?
I'm going to say Detroit says no. Understanding this is probably actually a lower ask than what Anaheim is going to want. So the real answer here is I think both teams say no. And the reason, if I'm Steve Yzerman, I say no, and we just talked about it, they don't have solutions on defense. They cannot afford to be giving up someone of ASP's caliber, as good as Mason McTavish is, and as much as he directly fills a need on that first line or second line, depending what they do with him and Kasper. Right now, this isn't about making decisions for right now. There is a perfectly plausible long-term solution here where MBN, Carter Bear, Nate Danielson, one of those three guys fills the solution that Mason McTavish would be filling. How bleak does that defense look without ASP now in the long-term projection? So I think the value's fine. I just think the Red Wings can't afford to be giving up defense for something where they could in theory, fill internally within the next 2 to 3 years?
I think Anaheim says no. I think that the gap between Sandin Pellikka and Olen Zellweger is smaller than the gap between Mason McTavish and Michael Rasmussen, and I don't think a second round pick makes up for that. So I think it's a no from Anaheim.
Yeah, at the end of the day, like, I think you made a good point to say, like, the Red Wings and their positional needs and what they'd be giving up in ASP is an important calculation here. But Anaheim's not stupid. Mason McTavish is one of the most valuable young trade assets we've seen in a long time. And I think I'm kind of surprised if he was in a bigger market, there would be way more noise about the fact that he's being potentially moved. You know, like, nothing's guaranteed, and I still think the ultimate result is that they'll sign him. But that's a guy who's not just going to one day prove it. He's already proven that he's productive in this league to a significant level, and he's only going to get better. He's a player, a prospect who had pedigree, who came in and translated at a position of need. There's not a coach in this league who wouldn't love to have Mason McTavish on their team, and he's so young and has so many of his best years ahead of him. It's one of those ones where you're not upset if the Red Wings trade for him, but it's going to be such an uncomfortable price. You're having to ask yourself, is this worth the hit at other positions? I ultimately would still probably do most of the Mason McTavish trade proposals, but I don't think Brad's wrong for pointing out that, you know, what you're giving up in ASP and other pieces is significant there.
Yeah,
I'd do it too, just on value. Like, it's, I think Mason McTavish is every bit as hard to find as a right shot D. So,
like, if you take this exact trade proposal, but throw in a forward instead of ASP, I'm doing it. And I don't even care which forward you pick out of the Red Wings system.
Lucas Raymond.
System, not on the team.
Stan Olsen says to Detroit, Matt Barzal. To the Islanders, Trey Augustine, MBN, an unprotected first, and JT Compher. I'm going to assume no salary retained on Compher, and I'm going to assume the unprotected first is for next season.
I'm going to say no. As much as I'd love Barzal, that's just too much to give up there. This is just purely I will trade some of that package for Matt Barzal, but not all of it.
Read it again. Augustine, a first, MBN,
JT Compher for Barzal.
Yeah. No, I don't think so. I think it's too much.
It's quite a bit. Maybe we're chuds. Maybe this is why, we always preach that the Red Wings should get better, but the moment someone's like, yeah, well, you have to pay up a little bit, we're like, no, not our money.
But what's the comp for that trade? Like, isn't that like more than Buffalo got for Jack Eichel?
It is, and that's why I'm saying no. Like, if you took out the unprotected first,
or MBN.
Yeah, I'm not doing it with an unprotected first either way. But call it top 5 protected, just to Gavin McKenna protect this thing. And then, you take out MBN or you take out Augustine. Yeah, I'm 1,000% doing that. Even if you have to add in a smaller piece to replace that piece. Like, if you take out Augustine and throw in Bouillon, protect the first, I'm probably okay with it. Like, it's at least in the range then, but it's just too rich.
See, I don't have a problem with Augustine because the goalie situation in Detroit. Now, granted, you don't know which one's going to be really good, or if both are, or if neither are. I'd feel a little more comfortable with the Augustine part of it than, you're going to trade. You've spent this draft capital trying to build your system to have a harder flavor, and then you're going to trade it away with a pick to get one of the skinniest guys in the NHL, who's, granted, really fast, but on the older side. Like, you really got to take advantage of Matt Barzal. You shorten your window, I think. Granted, you might not have a window, but if you get Matt Barzal, I think you got to win really fast. So I just think it's a little too much. Something's got to come off of there. I agree. Like, Augustine could be really good, so maybe that helps, but it's not the one I would want to take out. I'd want to take out probably Brandsegg-Nygard.
Okay, I keep lying. We're going to do one more. And this one's going to be not just this trade proposal, but a conversation about what it would take to get this player overall. Let's say for some reason, Boston decides that Pastrnak is going. They're going hard rebuild. Kasper, the Friendly Post, suggests 2026 first, so we'll assume unprotected, a second, Bear and Bouillon for Pastrnak. I personally don't think that does it for Boston. And at the same time, what would? Like that would be an insane price for Pastrnak.
I don't think you're terribly far off. I think this is in the range. Again, we use the Jack Eichel comp as probably something that'd be reasonable for this.
I think Pastrnak would be worth more than Eichel was when he was traded. Pastrnak is healthy, and like I get that.
Yeah, but he's
Eichel's
only
not
got
the
how many
same.
years left on his deal? I know it's a lot, but like Vegas knew they were getting Eichel long term when they did that.
He has a lot of years left, right?
I want to say 5 or 6.
6. If you include this, you're 6. So assuming the trade happens today.
Yeah, so it's only a couple less than. If I'm the Detroit, I'm doing it just because as much as I worry about the unprotected first, if you're getting David Pastrnak alongside Raymond and Larkin, I'm sorry, you're not finishing in the bottom 15 of the league unless everybody gets hurt. So, yeah.
It's the same trade as Connor, basically, right?
Exactly.
And Pasternak's better than Kyle Connor, so I think you have to say yes.
Exactly.
That would give Boston, we said unprotected for this year, right? First? That would give Boston 3 first-round picks this year in the Gavin McKenna draft. I think.
When has Boston ever gone wrong with 3 first-round picks?
We're all the same
well, I mean,
thing
if you're
here.
picking 1, 2, and 3, maybe, yeah. Boston acts illogical sometimes, a lot of the time. So I think they would give this a more serious look than what a lot of people give them credit for.
They're
one injury away from McAvoy, Pastrnak, Swayman from being bottom of the league.
Well, we saw what happened to them when Lindholm and McAvoy got hurt. They were arguably the worst team in the league from that point on. Like they weren't just bad, they were holy hell bad, and that was with Pastrnak healthy.
For those who don't remember, 2015, Boston had picks 13, 14, and 15. And their plan was to trade up for first overall, which that year was none other than Connor McDavid. I want to say they were interested in second overall as well for Jack Eichel. Don't quote me on that. But they essentially like collected these picks and it was public knowledge that they were going to try to move up. Edmonton and Buffalo, both not interested. And Boston, instead of going Barzal, Connor, Shabbat, which went the 3 picks after them. And a lot of people were saying at least a couple of those guys would have been the sensible picks. They took Jacob Zaboral, Jake DeBrusk, and Zachary Senyshyn. Imagine Boston with Barzal, Connor, and Shabbat.
Well, there's a salary cap, Ryan. They would have to trade to give some away because if you draft properly and develop, like you just aren't rewarded for that. So
And the thing is, too, because we've seen time and time again, awful picks in the first round, but hindsight, you're like, okay, that was the obvious pick at the time. Like, we can dump on the Philip Zadina pick all we want. Every Red Wings fan was doing a backflip when he was sitting there at 6 because he was top 3, top 4 projected. Boston reached on all 3 of those guys. Like, I think Senyshyn wasn't rated in anybody's first round. DeBrusk was like a late first round projection, and I have no idea where Zaboral was. So it's not like that they took the 3 guys on the board and it just happened to be Barzal, Connor, and Shabbat were better. Those were then probably the next 3 guys up on most people's rankings. It just makes it even funnier to me.
I say we let them run it back just to see if they do it again. Okay. We are going to take our final break here on the Winged Wheel podcast before we get into our last segment of the episode. Back after this, a word from our sponsors.
We're going to overtime.
Overtime is brought to you by our Patreon supporters. Again, patreon.com/Winged Wheel podcast, the ticket giveaway, the bonus episodes, the bonus off-season episodes, which we are catching up on now that Evan's back, the Discord, and you also get access to the Max Bultman sleep cam. We have 3 cameras set up in his room, and he's only found 2 of them so far. So you still have access to that. So again, patreon.com/Winged Wheel podcast. Before we get into questions, it'll be a little bit of an abbreviated one today. Some news came out as we were recording. Max, you mentioned the prospect tournament roster is out and some notable names on there.
Yeah, Nate Danielson, Michael Brandsegg-Nygard, Axel Sandin Pellikka, all in, and Carter Bear, I think, is the most important addition to that one. Obviously, coming off the Achilles injury, you weren't sure. I believe the hope all along has been that he would be ready for camp, and a great sign to see him on the prospect tournament roster, that seems to be on schedule. So Yeah, I mean, there's other, names worth knowing on there. I think, with the goalies, Rudy Guimond, Michael Pradell, get looks at those guys. Certainly Emmett Finney is a guy I'm curious to see who's only ever been really good at events like this. But it's the star power. It's the first round picks at the top. You weren't sure how many there were going to be this year. It's 4.
I know it's surprising to see Nate Danielson there, but I'm also kind of not surprised, both from his side and the team's. He could crack this roster, and I wouldn't be shocked if they want as many looks as possible at him and he wants as many looks as possible, because he's not, a lock to go back to Grand Rapids the same way. Like if Emmett Finney, we were talking about, if Emmett Finney has a great preseason, he's still going to be a Grand Rapids player, unless it is just absolutely out of this world, right? Nate Danielson, it's in his control whether or not he makes this team, in my mind. Maybe he has some things stacked against him in terms of roster spots or whatever, but he can make this team. So he probably wants as much competitive ice as possible, and the Red Wings want as fulsome of a look as possible before they make decisions. So, I mean, it's fun. And then for Carter Bear, yeah, that's just thrilling news. Wasn't surprising. When I was down there recently, everyone I talked to had all said the exact same things. Like, you got to see this kid play. Like, he's an absolute dog. They're not concerned at all about his health, and it seems to be how it's playing out. All right, let's jump into some questions here from our Patreon supporters from our overtime thread. First one says, from Brian Munn, says, what are the odds that Wings signed Dmitry Pechelnikov after his season in the KHL? What are the complications of actually accomplishing a signing? Are there roadblocks? Any relationship to retiring Fedorov's number this year to help out with the signing? I'll say if there's any kind of, relationship to the Fedorov thing, like that would be a surprise or just like happenstance. The roadblocks are, it's Russia. The KHL wants to keep their top talent, but Chelnikov's getting more and more attention as a top young talent over there. They're going to try their usual thing of getting him to sign, dump trucks of money in his front yard and try to coerce him one way or another. But Chelnikov has only ever indicated so far that he's interested in coming to Detroit. So are there roadblocks? Yeah, it's Russia. But I would say the odds are pretty good as far as you could say that.
75, 80%. Am I right around the ballpark for you?
Yeah, I think that's fair. Dan Hedin says, good morning, boys. As we look at the roster, who is your surprise to make opening night roster? Also, who knew the lack of sleep would help Evan's golf game get better? Time to get those 6 a.m. tee times.
Well, if we all agree that it would not be a surprise if Nate Danielson made the opening night roster, I would say my surprise, like I'd be genuinely surprised it happened, but it's at least within the realm of possibility that I could see it happening, would be MBN. I think just his style of game will really, really appeal to everybody in Detroit. And if he can have a big rookie tournament, a huge preseason, there's a pretty big hole at wing. Like, again, I'm not calling it likely, but I could see a reality MBN gets on there.
Yeah, that would be what I'd be thinking too. MBN would be the top of the list that would qualify as a surprise.
I think with the way they've approached things, Danielson would qualify, but I might just be trying to wriggle the bounds to get a layup answer.
That's very Evan-coded of you. Also, you should know this about Evan, a 6 a.m. tee time. The only thing stopping him from doing that is the dew on the grass. He would love that. Don't threaten him with a good time.
Those are the best tee times. I don't even want to admit it. Those are the best tee times. You can play in like 3 hours. Nobody's ahead of you, and you're done by like 10 a.m. You have the whole day ahead of you. It's the best.
I think still one of the best rounds of my life. Evan and I played together. I didn't even play well, but there was a bad thunderstorm and it just stopped abruptly. So we got out to the course and there was no one on there. And the two of us played in, I think, like a shade over 2 hours. It was incredible.
Yeah.
That was still the best thing that's ever happened to me. All right. This one is a trade proposal that I didn't read, but I think it's worth bringing up because it's such a poor proposal. Listening to Ryan Hanna in the shower says, Ryan Hanna to the Steve Dangle podcast in exchange for Steve Dangle. Adam and Jesse would not hang up quick enough. There's no way they would do that deal.
Also, you can't have Brad and Steve on one regularly occurring show. You're talking supernova explosiveness there.
the listeners would develop the technology on how to punch someone in the face through their car stereo in record time. It'd be quicker than the fastest medical technology accomplishment we've ever made. They would find out how to do that.
Maybe during the Olympics, it's worth demoing the Brad and Steve Dangle Canada hockey podcast experience.
I would like the opportunity to be like one of the more mellow guys on a podcast for once.
Okay, with that, we're going to wrap up. It's a shorter one, I know, but again, check out the link in the description, Winged Wheel Podcast Night with the Grand Rapids Griffins. You get access to the pregame live recording of the podcast at Van Andel Arena, featuring special guests from the Grand Rapids Griffins and more. You get access to the Winged Wheel Podcast Grand Rapids Griffins co-branded merch. You get to see Evan with his Bad Day to Be a Hot Dog hat, and you will still get the Old Time Hockey giveaway. Stay tuned for lots more coming. We have planned for you that weekend as well. Thank you to all of our listeners of the Winged Wheel Podcast, to our Patreon supporters. Again, patreon.com/Winged Wheel Podcast if you want to support the show. And if you want to help us out, but Patreon's not for you, just wherever you get your podcast, subscribe, leave a rating, a review, the stars, the thumbs up, whatever it is, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube. It really does help us out. Tell a friend about the show. We'd like to thank Max Bultman of The Athletic Detroit, who I know loves these outros and always marvels at how long they take. And to our name level supporters on Patreon, we could not thank you enough. Arjun Shankar, Ease Bartels on behalf of the Sarah Ground Foundation, Aikfer, THL champ Samuel Soderholm, Icon Glenn Brabham, below average ball hockey goalie Rain Dano, Sea Lion, Darb EQ, Matthew M. Rice, Adam Rose, Adam Suiza, Admiral Matt S. of the Cheesebag Navy, Alex Toger, Andy Hardcore, Anna Sleeman, Asher Killian, August, Beer League Legend, Best James Bond, Bingo Bango, Brian Mudd, Butts Carlton, Carlo Bertina Nanaluski, CB55, Chris Black, Susan High Five, Clip Clop Nene, Connor Scovey, Craig Kibble, Dad Evan talks too much. We are concerned. Derek Enstam, DJ Denton, Eric Hill, Give Blood Fight Probert, Grand Rapids Girly, Griffin God Creatives, Hockeytown Matt, Hassam Al-Qassem, Jay Gollum, Jacob Turner, Jeff Pridemore, John Ingalls, Jonathan Miller, Kaylin Wood. Now I have to learn how to click on a Macintosh. Mark Hernandez, Marty, Matt McKay, Mr. Kuzi. Picking a name gives me anxiety. Podgy713, RA, Recreating Evan in the Aggregate, Roy Donk, Sam Bankson, Slim Smitty Cards, Stephen Ortlieb, That's What I Appreciate About You, William, Iserplan Stan, General Andy Bohan of the Cheesebag Army, 91 in the Rafters, and I'm Still Stranded in Arkansas, Aaron, All Motor No Hands, Angie, Ann Stanislavski, Antonio Gracias, Bellingham Acid Balls, Bex, Brad Simmons, Carl Thames, C.E. Hayes, Commander Ben Barron of the Cheesebag Space Force, Connor Layton, and Corey Prida, Darren Fick, Drop the Puck, Dub Club Hoodie Enjoyer. It's a great name. I hope you're enjoying that hoodie, and anyone else who has the hats. Dylan Larkin, Trade Sacrifice, Eric Nance, Evan Beckner, Evans Brown, Pomeranian, Falkness, Frank Stanley, Gene Sullivan, Gretzky, Griffey Boy, Jacob Marsh, James Pridemore, Johnny Page, Jeremiah Dobo, Jim, J.M. Rhapsody, Josh Yelton, Kevin McCracken, Quaz, Linda Hull, Lonnie Zone, Lucas Raymond, Matt Keeler. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought this was America. Oh, Ophelia, As Good As It Gets, Peter Swanson, Return of Jambo, Rosie Posey, Roy Mudbutt, Steven, That Other Guy, The Hodag, The Hat 123, Trent Thorough, Wings fan in St. Louis, Scott, You Canadian, and your second favorite patron. Thank you all so very much. And as a little reward for you who, for some reason, stuck to the end here, next episode, you get to hear Evan read the Patreon names again. So
What? Oh, yes. That's true.
As you can tell, he's prepared. Enjoy that, folks.
Yes.
Thanks for tuning in to the Winged Wheel Podcast. Be sure to visit wingedwheelpodcast.com, where you'll find links to subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. You'll also find ways to support the show, like Patreon, official podcast merchandise, and more. And don't forget to follow us on X at Winged Wheel Pod, at Ryan Hanna, WWP, at Brad Crisco, and at Hockeytown Evan, as well as Winged Wheel Podcast on Instagram.